Hello and welcome to the ESBN Podcast. My name is Tavian, the philosopher Napier, and this is where we talk about all the things happening at WMU Esports. Today is going to be a fun one. I have my lead of production here. I have Bella. Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
It's going well. Thank you very much. And we get to talk about something I don't think we've historically talked too much about. When Chippy was on here, I know he's probably touched on it a little bit, but this is the first time we've had someone else as a guest come for production, which is really exciting. I think there's a lot of production nerds out there that might get a lot out of this episode, and also a chance to thank you, but also learn a little bit more about our process, because a lot of times the front facing side of it is our events or the players. So I think this will be a nice chance to learn more about our production process. But before we get into the nitty gritty, I wanted to talk a little bit about like your background. I know you are a gamer, but not like a esportser.
No, not like an esports. I mostly play like Minecraft and World of Warcraft. I'm a big fan of like RPGs and story building, world building, that sort of stuff. But both of my parents play video games, and like they always have for as long as I've been alive. Like when my mom was pregnant with me, she would just sit for hours playing Knights of the Old Republic on her free time. So I sort of grew up in a household where playing games was sort of normal, you know? So yeah.
That's really cool. I might pick your brain on that a little, because I know we've talked in the past about that, and I just find that so fascinating. My parents like dabbled, but like once me and my brother were like able to beat them at games, they kind of just they moved on to something else. And I definitely didn't have that experience, but I've seen a lot more students that have had that experience. I think that's really cool, especially when I'm talking to a lot of non-parents at our summer camps and such. It's really interesting seeing the different relationships that parents have with their kids that are gamers, like gamer parents, and also non-gaming parents. Like this totally different dynamic. Whereas like your kid is living in a different world when you're not a gamer, but then when you are a gamer, it's like a shared like appreciation for this like craft that is very hard to explain if you don't actually experience yourself. So, but yeah, that is really interesting. But also, this would be a good refresher for me, but how did you get involved with the esports program?
Well, I saw the esports like club tabling during Bronco Bash and stuff like that, and I was already like a little interested in it because, you know, video games, who wouldn't want to do that? And I have worked production before. At my church, I started helping run the tech booth, so like the slideshow during Sunday services, and it's really similar, you know. It's the same sort of live production, you know, working with a team. So I started volunteering at the esports arena. I think it was my first semester, end of my first semester here, end of fall. Man, what year?
Fall 23?
22.
22?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang, it's been that long.
I know. Crazy. So I started volunteering, and then I feel like I ran into at the VDC, and you're like, hey, we're gonna start hiring people. Are you interested in that?
Dang.
And I was like, yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah, that was like 2 years ago.
Crazy.
Jeez.
But yeah, and then I started working there, and it was great.
Yeah. Wow. I totally forgot about that. For some reason, I thought you were one of the students that had the like programming class or something.
No.
Man.
Well, I took a video game related class, and we came to the arena once, but that was after I'd been working there a while. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Man. Yeah. So I totally blanked on that. It's been so long. So you're a junior now, then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. So can you talk a little bit about like in the early stages of working in production, like what that was like for you? Because the process has changed a good bit since then. So you were there during the earlier-ish stages. So like what was that first like?
It was definitely intimidating at first, because a lot of the games that esports sort of focuses around a very fast pace. There's a lot going on the screen. It's happening very quickly. You're switching between perspectives. And as someone who hasn't really ever played or watched Valorant or Rocket League or Overwatch or League, it was a little bit intimidating at first, like I said, to sort of even know what was going on the screen. But over time, you sort of get more comfortable with it, and you also get more comfortable with like the technologies that we're using. A big learning curve, I will say, because there's sort of a lot to tackle when you first get into it. Like we have to learn vMix, you have to learn how we do things at the arena, all the sort of component parts that work together to create the live stream. So it was fun, stressful sometimes, but very fun.
Yeah. you touched on a good topic that's worth mentioning, because I usually talk about this more so with like tryouts and stuff, where I come across a lot of people, both in college, but also just general tournaments, where either for tryouts or for tournaments, they feel like they're not good enough to try out, or they're not skilled enough to participate in this activity. Where I feel like there's a similar kind of apprehension with production, where it's like, I'm not into insert a game, so I don't think I am good to work here. I think there's less of that with production, but I think it's still worth noting that you weren't someone who played a lot of the traditional esports or anything like that. And then we have some students in the past, like I think Anissa, if you remember her, I don't think she was a gamer at all. So I would say with production, it's pretty diverse in terms of like the wide range of gamer to non-gamer ratio. And so I wanted to touch on that because I think that's really important for some people to know about, because I've seen that before.
Yeah, I just do it for fun in my free time,
Yeah. It's fun to nerd out about production, especially like if you're interested in live streaming for yourself, or just like, even if it's not esports related, like just like you said, churches. I know a lot of churches use vMix. I've seen like tons of tutorials. I know other sports. Riot uses vMix. So whether it's esports or not, the software that we use is pretty I don't want to say industry standard, but one of the standards. And if not this one, then it's going to carry over. And if you can use this, I feel like you can also use OBS. OBS is also a really great free software for those who are interested in streaming but don't want to spend any money. You don't need to. There's a lot of free services out there. Definitely reach out to us if you have any questions. I love, like, it's weird, but in my like free time, I like to give advice for how to get people's streams set up. So like people, it's like I can't not do it, especially if it's like an audio issue. Like I'll hop in, if it's my friend, I'll hit them up and be like, yo, you got to fix this.
I can help.
If it's someone I don't know, I'm not going to bother. Like if they like, I'm not going to do it on their stream or anything. But if it's like something obvious, it's like, you got to fix this. Like, let me show you. Let me walk you through it. I'm actually going to help. Bird? So he's taking a week off. So Bird's one of our staff members on the Student Rec Center. He doesn't come off as a gamer, but he's a big Civilization fan, like Sid Meier's. He's taking an actual like week off to play the game.
That's awesome.
So he wants to stream, and I'm going to teach him how to
that's
set up a stream.
Cool.
I think that's awesome. I think that's really, really cool. A lot of people stay in touch through stuff like streaming. So it's really fun that we get to do that. I'm super appreciative of the knowledge that we have and kind of take it for granted at this point. So I think I want to learn a little bit more about the, like, you've kind of established yourself and you're our main lead person for production. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your anime arc of how you started off, which you already touched on, but also just like, in your eyes, what got you to where you are now, the level of knowledge? I know you have outside experience that always helps, but I wanted to hear your take on that growth.
I mean, it's kind of just like over time, you sort of get better at something after you do it enough times. I definitely felt sort of unprepared once our other production lead stepped down, because Chippy was like, he did everything, and he had been there for so long and he was great at managing everything. And it's sort of like, now I've got to step up and do this, like coordinate everything, make sure everything happens that needs to happen and stuff like that. So, I just slow over time. You sort of take it, like you do a little bit every day. I don't know. It's just sort of like a slow process. Like you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, and then you look back and like everything is sort of changed. So.
Where does the passion for production come into play? Because I think everyone so far that's been there, at least to some degree, has a passion for either esports or production. So for you, like, where does that stem from? I really like sort of making things work well together. So when production goes smoothly, it's very like, we did it. It's very satisfying to put together a live stream and make sure it looks nice for the stream and everything like that. I don't know. It's very satisfying to me for some reason. I can totally relate to that. It's weird because like I started kind of backwards in a way, because I did YouTube videos, and that was sort of my introduction to like making content, and then getting invited to do commentary. So like I in a lot of ways I was a participant before I actually ran my own stuff. And so like my roommates, we had a gaming house essentially, so we hosted tournaments out of that house. We didn't stream, so it was purely just a competition and like watching him set up and organize tournaments and get the word out. But then also being at like a big tournament where there's like thousands of viewers and just kind of like talking to them about video games.
That's so cool.
And so I kind of got like thrown into a lot of it, which is obviously a part of my like early stages of the training process.
Yeah.
I was just getting thrown into it. So yeah, it was really weird how that kind of like people fall into it. I know right now you're interested in the film aspect of it too. So I would imagine before, I think you had said you switched minors or majors.
Yeah. I started out in computer science and then I realized I was not enjoying it. And I switched over to film, and it's definitely like there is a big aspect of like film in the production, the live production that we do, because you are working with essentially actors, but it's more of like a documentary style because we got our casters, we got our players on stage, and we have the camera in the arena. If you tune into our live streams, we have a camera for the players that we sort of use to capture their reactions, and we can adjust it. So there's some aspects of like camera work in it too, even just a little bit. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a couple topics I'm gonna touch on, but I'm gonna forget this one if I don't think of it now. I don't know if I've talked too much with our production staff about this, more so the players, but it's something I feel like I need to revisit with a lot of our newer staff, and that's I'll use the term composure.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me because I want to find that balance of encouraging students to work on having their composure, but I don't want to be so insistent that I'm dismissive of people's feelings, you know?
Yeah.
Because everyone kind of processes feelings differently. And I definitely see like it's just a normal thing as a college student where people want to complain and be upset. And I've actively made a choice personally to like try not to focus too much on the complaints during live production specifically. It's kind of like I in competition, I call this like my kill mode, where it's like I switch to a different person, where I don't want to be your friend. Like I'm not mean or anything like that. I don't want to talk to people. I just want to compete and play my best, and I kind of have to be
focus
I want to be locked in. I want to be like slightly angry, like very small, just enough to like be focused. Where with production, for me, it's kind of like I have to be more zen-like, so that I don't panic and complain and like cause other people to melt down. And I guess maybe you can speak on this from a lead position too, because as leaders we are sort of the emotional compass for the rest of the group. So for me personally, I feel obligated to maintain a composure, even if like nothing's getting done. I'm like thinking, or just making a decision and doing it versus like complaining about the situation as a whole. And I would like for you to speak on just like your experience with like where you are with composure, what your thoughts are on it, and like maybe observing how other people might process that.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I actually did write down level-headedness as one of the things, because one of the questions you gave me beforehand was like, what sort of things do you have to have as a production lead? And I put down level-headedness because like stuff is gonna break. It's gonna go wrong. It happens almost every single stream that we have. We have some sort of issue, some audio's not working, the stream's not working, the video feed is not right. And you just gotta sort of like stay chill, you know, and sort of work with it and solve the problem and not get caught up in frustration or irritation or anything like that.
Yeah. I never thought about this, but I'm very thankful for the fact that we don't really have an environment where we point fingers and stuff. That's also on my. We have a great team. Yeah. We've got a great team, and they all work together incredibly well. And I think that is such a huge part of production that it's like the whole thing. If you've got a good team who can work together well and communicate well, your production's going to do better because of it. Because it really is just such an integral part of how media gets made. Yeah, and there is a big parallel between live production and traditional film. I don't want to compare the two, so I don't want to say that live production is harder, but you don't have multiple takes, right? I'll say that like you can't do a reshoot for the most part when you're doing live production. It's one take all the way through, and you just have to work with that. And for me, I like that pressure. And it's kind of the same thing with like recording podcasts. Like obviously those can get edited, which I'm very grateful for because I've had some stumbles in the past. But you still have to lock in a sense, for example, I try not to use a lot of filler words such as like, when I'm editing my own content, I hate hearing myself do all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I thought that I didn't do that as much as I did, but I do. But when it comes to live production, that pressure, it is stressful. So it's like, it's important to acknowledge that, because again, I don't want to come off as a robot or not sympathetic, but it does encourage you. It's kind of like a microcosm of what students are going to experience outside of college, because there are going to be times where things are stressful and not fair, and like you're going to be thrown into a situation where none of it is your fault, but you have to work your way through it.
Yeah.
And the more panicked you get, the harder it gets to, one, communicate, two, problem solve, all these different things. And so it's really easy for me to compare that with like competition, because it's like win and lose.
Yeah.
Right. It's really easy dynamic of what happens. Or improve or don't improve. But with production, it's not something that it kind of just spills over for me personally, and I kind of mentioned that, but it's not something where I feel like it is something like an active conversation that's worth having, especially since I do feel a little detached from students, you know, not like in a sense of I'm aware, but I can't relate, you know what I mean? This is a different time I grew up in. I have a different kind of resilience due to my circumstances.
Yeah.
So it's like important for me to learn, but also I think it's important to have that conversation with some of the staff. Maybe during our next staff meeting.
Yeah.
So kind of brainstorming here on the fly during the podcast, but also I think it's really important to talk about. So you did talk a little bit about like the leadership aspect of it and communication. You're still in your like official first semester with the title. Before last semester, you still had that position, but it's more official now, and like you're the lead person. So what is that? Is there any pressure there? What is that like? You mentioned that a little bit, but like now that you're communicating, because I've seen you communicate a lot more with the staff. You're taking not taking responsibility, taking charge, and you know you've been doing a great job. By the way,
thank you.
But what is that like for you?
I mean, it's a lot of, it's a stressful job, because obviously we've got people watching, people depending on us in live time, but you really just gotta not like let it get to you. You sort of get used to it after a while too. And I've been doing this for 6 semesters now. So you sort of get used to it, and you just gotta focus on like what you know, what your strategy is, and just rely on that. This semester particularly, like you said, I have been trying to sort of take a wider like role in production, because as the production lead, if something's going to get done, it doesn't just fall on me, but like at the end of the day, like I'm the one who's sort of directing everything, besides you, but like during live production, I'm sort of like the top, so everything that needs to get done, I have to make sure it sort of gets done. And the team has been really great for that, because they know their jobs, they know what they need to be doing, and it really helps everything sort of come together. But if, like, sometimes in discussion, production will be like, oh, why isn't this being done? Why isn't this being done? And I think that's, like, not the right sort of mentality to have. It's like, it should be, why aren't we doing something about this?
Right.
Because this is our work. We're collectively working together to create this thing. So if something's not working or it can be improved, that's on us. And I think if we like acknowledge that and sort of step up, it can improve the experience for everybody. Yeah, for sure.
That's actually something I learned with coaching, is to use terms like we or us, and instead of trying to put the onus on somebody else. That's good awareness for that. I like that, and I love the brainstorming and the talking. It's nice seeing like not me be the person to lead that too. It's really cool, because again, like part of my job, or just for me personally, is to help you guys get jobs out after you graduate. So having the best experience, like work experience, not like lived experience, that too, but in terms of like a resume and getting a job, that's the sort of thing that is really helpful. And for you as a leader, that is all good, but also for the students that are getting that experience from your leadership, they're also learning from that and having some responsibility, but also having that team environment, because not every job is going to be that good, unfortunately, where like people are have everyone's best interest in mind. I come from a background of sales where you kind of have to watch your back all the time, and so this is like working at Western in general, while I've been here since 2018, I've been under the rec center since around the time that you met me, I guess a little bit before that. And they legitimately, care and like want students to do well. And so that's really, really nice to where I can talk to my staff, my team, and my higher ups about like the issues that I'm having, and they actually hear me and I feel heard. And so that's definitely something that even before then I wanted to make sure that the students had, but it's good that like, we've always had really good leaders that do take that into consideration. And it goes all the way back to like 2018. Did you meet Trevor?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Yeah, he was like, you'll hear Trevor, Evan, and Zach are kind of like the big three. It's kind of very My Hero Academia-esque. The nerd in me is coming out. But yeah, so it's just really cool to see the new leadership coming up. I think I always mention the esports club as well. So make sure also if you're interested in esports in any capacity, whether it be production or casual, whatever, join the Discord 100%. For the club. But yeah, so when it comes to you being a leader and having this, I want to put a pin in that thought and ask another question, but yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to add in terms of like being a leader and things that you've learned?
I mean, I really have learned how to sort of work with a team and direct the team from this job, which is something I had limited experience in, but never to this sort of extent, because during live production, everything sort of has to happen at the correct time, timing wise. And if it doesn't, then like things sort of fall apart. So it's really, this job has taught me a lot about communication, a lot about keeping everybody on the same page, making sure everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing, and just keeping everything on track, and which I really appreciate because that's going to be a great help in anything that I do after this. For sure, yeah. Production is so broad. There's so much involved in it that it's something that I'm still learning to this day as like you guys are getting more responsible and taking more responsibility. I'm realizing certain things that need to be maintained because for me, I have to make sure I'm keeping that in mind because you guys will eventually graduate, hopefully for your sake. But also, like, I have to think about how do I pass that down. So one, the training materials that you and Justin have been helping with creating have been very great. But also just watching you guys figure out things in the process, like the casters is a really big one, where it seems really obvious and it seems like people would just want to shoutcast, but it's like no, you have to find a routine and a schedule and make sure that you're communicating because people forget. All kinds of different things when it comes just specifically to the production of the event. Having the run sheets when we don't have run sheets versus when we do, like how we communicate that information. A lot of that is and the consistency of that is really important. And that's something that I'm trying to personally master, but also help you guys master as well. And so I'm always learning as you guys are learning, which is really nice to do as well. Well, production is a lot of just plan. The more preparation you can do beforehand, before things start going wrong, the better. Because, like, stuff will always go wrong. But if you have plans in place and you have solutions and you know how to fix it, then it's way less of a big deal, and it's way more surmountable of a challenge. Yeah, it's a lot more delegatable, if that is a word as well. If you know what you need to do, then it's easier to do it, I guess. Yeah, because I'm sure you've come across this too, where it's like, oh, I'm having this issue with this thing. It's like, oh, you just do this and this. Yeah. Like you just know just from what they're saying what the issue is and how to fix it. And I mean, it is nice to have that written down, of course, but also just like the experience over time of doing it so many times, it's really easy to delegate that stuff. And so if they come across issues, then you can just quickly tell them what to do rather than having to go like, oh, I'll go do it myself. Yeah. Because that was me and Chippy both had that issue where it's like, we just want to go do it ourselves. But like in our own way, we both realized that that's not sustainable. It's just not. So having other people fail, having other people learn, training other people, those are all really important aspects to do. 100%. All right. So you are listening to 89.1 Wider FM, your source for radio evolution. Nailed it. So let's switch gears a little bit here. There's a couple different topics I want to think about here. Well, real quick, I'll ask you, is there anything interesting that you wanted to talk about? Like anything that you wanted to bring to the table? I mean, not entirely. You did ask me, one of the questions you sent me beforehand was one of my favorite production things that we've done so far. That was my next question. Yeah. Mine has probably got to be, I think it was last semester. It was like one of the first Bronco beatdowns that we were doing with our sort of expanded team once we had like brought on some new people, some new interns. And For those of you who don't know, Bronco Beatdown is our monthly fighting game tournament. You should come check it out. It's great. It's wonderful. We stream it. Everyone has a great time. But for production, it's sort of like a departure from our normal everyday varsity games. It's a bit more laid back because like once the games are going, there's not as much for us to do besides just keep up with the scores and the games and the bracket, that sort of stuff. But that time we had like such a great environment going. Like everyone was sort of still figuring out like the dynamics of the team and everything. But it was just such a great time, and it was sort of just working with each other, sort of figuring out how we sort of fit together as a team. Making sure everything gets done, even if we aren't super familiar with the job or the people yet. That was one of my favorite like things ever, because we just had such a great time, such great energy in the booth, and that's really what makes me want to keep doing production, is just the team and the people who like make it up. Because obviously, yeah, you know, like the stuff that we make is cool, you know, the streams are great, and I like to think that our content is pretty good, but at the end of the day, it's really the experience of production is working with other people, and that's kind of like the most important part, at least to me. So
that's really cool. I've heard a couple of students mention it before. A staff mentioned about Bronco Beatdown, which is awesome because, like, so for those who don't know, you mentioned before it's our fighting game tournament, but that's more of a pet project that I kind of had to beg over the years to make happen. I definitely have more goals of like doing bigger fighting game tournaments. So like outside of working at Western, it's just something I've always wanted to do, is like have a big tournament in Kalamazoo where people come here. Because I've gone to like Chicago. Combo Breaker happens in Chicago. Frosty Faustings just happened in Chicago last week. And those are huge tournaments. And then we used to have a Youmacon Battle Opera in Detroit with the Youmacon Anime Convention. And that was like one of the bigger ones in the Detroit side. But Kalamazoo is like this nice hub where it's between Chicago, between Detroit, and a couple other big areas. But we don't have anything here. So like my ultimate goal, spoilers, is to eventually, host something big. Now, I don't know if that's going to be on Western or not. Like there are places in Western that I could do it. But there's also like the Radisson and stuff like that. So that's kind of the big goal. But also I do agree when it comes to like not even my love of fighting games, but just like the production side of it. I love that we get to set up more cameras. We have the table where they're facing head to head. Like I don't know the right word for it. It's not cinematography, but it's like the way
production value.
Yeah, it's something along those lines where it looks really, really cool, and the lighting and everything. I think it's one of our more fun events, and so it's kind of nice that non-fighting game students or people are getting enjoyment out of that as well. So that's really fun to hear, for sure. I think that's definitely a highlight for me. I gotta say, real briefly, like either Edward Cleveland or our first LAN with the Overwatch team with the meme controller trophy. Those are probably like top two for me. Because I'm a big personal development guy, so having somebody do that was really fun. But also just hosting a big LAN and then also our team winning it, really cool events. Shoot, there was a couple more things I wanted to touch on as well. I want to make sure I hit those. Well, while I do that, actually, so yeah, your major is now film.
Yes.
There's a couple of thoughts that I had about that. The main question is, what, I guess outside of this, what is your plan moving forward with your degree, if you have one?
You're asking me the hard questions now. I don't really know. I'm sort of open to opportunities. Like film's just such a broad industry. There's so many different applications. So I'm just gonna sort of figure it out after I graduate. I mean, I do like the live production aspects a lot. So if I could get something related to that, that'd be incredible. But I'm comfortable sort of doing whatever. I'm not in a super rush to sort of find my career purpose or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
I like learning things. I like trying new things. So I'm pretty open on that aspect.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of opportunities. Just thinking about your experience and your background. The hard part is going to be, putting yourself out there with resumes and interviews and stuff like that. But it's really cool that students have this, like, you have essentially professional experience, and of course recommendation. But it is. I did not know what I wanted to do at 18. I'm not saying that everyone needs to subscribe to this philosophy, but for me personally, I felt like, 17, 18 was too young to decide what you're going to do with the rest of your life. Obviously, you're a little bit older now. By the time you graduate, even still though, because I worked in game the gaming industry, and ended up not liking that. And I'm totally different from what my major is now. But something that always sticks with me, I had a chance to meet at Combo Breaker, actually, Ed Boon, who, if you don't know, he's the creator of Mortal Kombat. And I probably have mentioned this story to you, but for the listeners, I was big into like journalism at this point. I had worked for a couple different outlets, and I think I was just independent for this specific event, just out of fun. My friends took me there as my first major. I run to Ed Boon. I'm like, hey, I just got like one question for you. And I asked him, if someone wanted to be where you are, like, what would they do? And, you know, he didn't give me a canned answer. He actually like took the time to think about it and gave me like a good solid answer on this. And his answer was essentially like, get good at one thing. You can have other interests and things of that nature, because he was a programmer. Like, that's all he did, but now he like runs the whole entire thing. You know, he was one of the creators originally, but like his main task was programming, and games were a lot more simple back then. But yeah, he just talked about how, you know, he started off as a programmer and he worked on his skills, but over time, like, he got, you know, he developed other skills because, you know, he, like us, I would say, he just liked to learn things. And of course, that's always going to be very useful. But the reality, depending on people's situation, at least my reality was I had to earn money somehow while I worked on figuring out what I like to do. And so it was nice that I had skills. Like, one of my biggest skills that I didn't like but acquired was sales and talking to people. I am incredibly introverted. I still am, but I was like subconscious about being awkward. And but working at GameStop, I learned a lot about selling things, and then I started working at jobs where I didn't like what I was selling, but still acquired those skills, and that got me through a lot of doors, got me through more interviews. And then in that time, I was, you know, going back to school for coaching, going to tournaments, competing, making YouTube videos, and like all of those things, YouTube videos and organizing tournaments included, helped me get to where I am now. I love what I do. It is stressful, and you'll hear me, like, my staff will hear me complain from time to time, but it's because I love what I do that I like get that emotional about it. And so, you know, unsolicited advice is, you know, I'll give you what I was told was just to, you know, work on something. And if you can monetize that, then great. But also, I would say the more important part is to continue working on what you're passionate about, even if you're not getting paid doing it. Because sometimes some people's reality is they have to do something just to earn money while they work on their passions. Sometimes that's better for people because they don't want to do what they like to do for money. It's more of just a passion project. But for me personally, if you can do what you love doing and make money off of it, that's preferable for me.
Ideal situation.
Yeah, that's ideal for me. I come from like a different, my dad's Jamaican. There's like a stereotype of us being very hard workers and having like multiple jobs. And there's a reason why that's a stereotype. It's partially true. And I've always been that way once I was on my own. So everyone's situation is different, but that's the one thing that I can say that has been helpful for me personally. Yeah.
One of the things, the questions that we had was, what advice would you give someone who's interested in esports production, interested in sort of doing that sort of thing?
Thank you.
And like the number one thing I can think of is just to get involved. You know, once you take the first few steps, sort of like, because I volunteered for the esports program, and I did like volunteer production for a while, and it's you gotta sort of get that experience. You gotta like figure out if you actually like doing it, first of all, because you don't really know what it's gonna be like until you actually do it. But once you do start sort of getting that practice in and learning to work with a team, it really sort of opens your eyes to everything that production entails, and just keep sort of doing that. I don't know.
Thank you. Like, that was a question that I had in my head that I didn't put down, and so I appreciate that. I would agree. I think the biggest thing is just doing something. It's the same thing.
You just got to do something.
It's like competing in games as well. It's like just show up, and you'll find people that are better than you at it. Like, as long as you're not insecure about being around people that are better than you, you're going to get better at it. You're going to learn.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. You have to be open to learning. You just have to be sort of like humble in a way to like acknowledge like, I don't know anything about this, but people appreciate like eager people who are ready to learn, you know? And so if you're willing to learn, you're open to sort of gaining new skills, people appreciate that, and that will serve you well, no matter what you're trying to learn to do.
I can say this both as a supervisor and as a coach, I would more willingly have someone on my team or on my staff that is willing to learn and eager to learn versus someone who's just already good but has a crappy attitude.
Yeah.
If you have convinced yourself that you don't need to learn anything else, there's a lot of people, myself included, who would not bother to bring you onto the team.
Yeah.
Because if you think you already know it all and you're like college age to someone who's, I'm 37. That indicates to me that you more than likely don't know it all.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you can fit 18 to 21 years worth of experience and be better than everybody else. So like it makes it come off very delusional, not to be mean about it, but yeah. So that is hiring advice / coaching advice that I can give for anyone who's interested in doing either one of those things. Because yeah, it's important to there's always new things happening, especially in production. Technology is still developing, software is still developing, techniques are always still developing. So yeah, I mean, there's always a bunch of older stuff that you can learn, like more traditional. I've pretty much everything that I've learned in terms of production, anything that I'm interested in, music, it's like non-traditional. I kind of just learned it on my own and stumble in the dark. Some people do have a more formal background, which is also useful. But yeah, just being eager to learn is always going to be super helpful. I think another thing is not being afraid to fail.
Yes.
We touched on that a little bit. Have I talked to you about the lazy perfectionist?
No, I don't think so.
So this is a term that I created for myself when I was in San Diego. I was doing a lot of soul searching essentially, and I was trying to figure out why I was the way I was. And one of the habits that I had was when I grew up, I was always good at something or I wasn't.
Yeah.
And there was no middle ground for me. It was like I would just quit it if I wasn't good at it, or I stopped getting better at it. And so when I finally pushed that barrier and started working on myself, I was like, why am I like this? Why do I always have this, like, especially with art? Like if like I would just quit an art project if I didn't like it. I wouldn't redo it. I wouldn't start over. I'd be like, no, this is bad. On to something else. And so I created this term called the lazy perfectionist, where my definition of is the expectation of your expectation is higher than your ability, and so instead of making an effort, you either make minimal effort or don't try at all. And I felt like that resonated with a lot of people, and so that's kind of why I gave it that term, just to like remind myself about it. I talked to Edward Cleland about it a little bit the first time he came through, and that is, I guess for you, is that a term that is relevant or something you've seen from other people?
Probably, definitely. In terms of myself, I have been called a perfectionist. I am very particular about the details, which I think is helpful when you're running production, because it's always sort of a focus on, like, what can we do to improve the experience? How can we make this better? How can we make this run more smoothly? But I mean, I agree, and it's challenging. Production is challenging because you're not immediately going to be good at it. No one is immediately going to be good at production.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's just not how it works. You really just have to learn slowly over time, painfully.
Yeah.
You got to crash the stream a couple times.
Yeah, for sure. That's pretty much anything, which is why again, gaming. I love gaming in general. Because there's so much to pull from like life experiences, and a lot of the stuff that we're talking about are things I've talked about as a coach, and it's true. You can't let your analysis paralysis or your fear of perfection hold you back. There's a saying that I like in an esoteric term. The nerd in me doesn't like that it doesn't make sense, but it was like an old motivational speaker named Les Brown that said, "Shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you land upon you're with the stars," which logistically doesn't make sense. So don't worry about that. But I like the sentiment of like, yeah, failing forward, for example, you make a mistake, but that's kind of the human experience, is you make mistakes and you learn and you grow. I think America, I've talked about this with a lot of like pro players, where America in general has this mindset of like failure, like versus other countries. Like Japan is a really good country because they have a term called Kaizen, which is loosely translate to incremental growth every day, where they just, as a culture, have this mindset of getting better at things. And that's why a lot of times in like fighting games, the Japanese players might not always be the best every single time, but they will catch up. Like every single time they'll get better. You have people in their 40s and 50s that are from Japan that are still winning major tournaments because their default state is to just learn from their mistakes. Where in America, we make a big show out of losing, and like it's very common to make fun of people or to make excuses. So as a culture, I think it's kind of we're going against the grain a little bit, but I hope it's something that we learn to adapt more, is that failure is a good thing. Now obviously that's different when it comes to your grades. I don't mean that with grades. an F is not a good thing, but I mean with practice and like with the process of whatever you're trying to do, it's really important to fail, because if you don't, you might get an inflated ego, and then when you finally do get to a situation where you fail, you won't be resilient enough to handle it. So that is something that I think is very, very important to do as well. Any questions that you had for me, or anything else that you were thinking about?
I mean, you talked briefly about in discussions that we've had about the future of esports, which I would love to hear your thoughts on. Because I only have very limited experience with esports. Like outside of this job, I don't really engage with too much esports content, like I know that you do. So where do you see sort of esports going?
I need to do a deep dive into this again, because I actually saw a video recently about like some big names getting involved in esports, and so where I'm at now, I need to update my knowledge. So this is saying this with
disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer that there's more information that I need to have. So I've got to do my research. But I think that there's esports and there's college esports, and I think they're two different facets, because I don't think college esports is going anywhere anytime soon. I think it's going to grow. But in terms of like traditional esports, my concern is just like how the money moves, because one of the biggest issues is the volatility of how teams traditionally are made. And a lot of times it's like big name companies who don't know anything about video games, let alone esports, getting involved, buying a team, and then dropping the team. And I strongly dislike that process. And you're starting to see a lot more content creators start to support teams, like Team Liquid. Moist Critical has been very involved with Team Liquid, and I think I'm not going to say it's sustainable, but his method of how he supports a team, it's not like he expects a return on interest per se. It's more of him just supporting the team because he likes the team. I think with traditional esports, I think there needs to be some sort of a sustainable way to not just for the players to generate revenue, but also for these organizations to maintain themselves, because there is money to be had, but the issue is they spend so much money getting the project to happen and making these extravagant events that they don't make money all the time on these events in themselves. And it's kind of roundabout with like ad revenue and things. But with college esports, I think that's going to continue to grow, especially because a lot of pro players either retire or can go play for a college team while they're still in the pro series. So some of the like not as well-known players can be in the pros, but then go, I think Akron has been very historically had pros on their teams. I think that might have changed recently. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of room for growth with college esports. And I think one of the interesting things I heard recently was that from one of our students is that, while we don't currently offer scholarships, that in some ways works to our advantage. While I personally would like to have scholarships one day, I think they made a good argument as to why it's better just to find players organically and just build a community. It makes it a lot less likely that you're going to have consistently strong players all the time, but I think you're going to have people who are more passionate about just playing and having fun. And then my hope, more so than a prediction, is that more schools are supportive of esports and are more aware of what's involved to help it grow. Because I think there is a lot of work to make an esports program grow, especially ours with our facility, where the people at the highest the decision makers don't always know what is needed to properly support those programs. And I think that as they get more popular, they'll put a little bit more energy into that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So a couple of closing points that I'll mention, not specifically to production, but just the esports program is, of course, I've got to talk about social media, right? The first thing that I'll plug is the club Discord. I mentioned it earlier, but I said it before, I'll say it again. You're going to hear me say it a lot. Get in there. And I did remember one last point that I'll circle into in a second, but yeah, hop into the club Discord. We have a bunch of pickup group game or lobbies. We have our varsity teams are in there. Our staff are in there, all the e-board, non-gamers, alumni. So it's a really cool community that extends beyond just Western students or Western players. It's they have Minecraft servers. I play Marvel Rivals with some of the students sometimes. I just hit Plat 2, by the way. Yay. So I'm almost at Diamond, which is exciting because then you get to do band picks. But that does bring me to the topic of community. And I actually brought this up in our staff meeting. Where I want to emphasize this, where if you're, maybe you're a freshman or maybe you haven't found your circle yet, hopping into the club Discord is going to be a great choice. Reaching out, trying to find a game. A lot of people play different obscure games. and there's a chance that you might find other people that are interested in those things, or find someone, if you're competitive, that you can help them find a league or form a team, whatever it may be. So I think that, one question that I'll have for you is, in terms of this, is like the gaming community or even like the production community, is one, it's important. The point that I'll make is that it's important to find your community, so hop in there if you are a gamer and don't have that circle. But also for you, Bella, what, like, when it comes to esports, when it comes to the gaming community and production, has that had an impact on your experience here at Western? And if so, how?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't play a ton of the games that the club plays, because they play all sorts of kinds. But I was very sort of surprised when I first sort of came here at how big like the community was, and how many people like on campus were like sort of interested in very similar things that I was. And sort of over time, just seeing that community work and the events that they organize, and like the weekly Smash tournaments and everything like that, it's incredible to sort of see a community in action like that. And it's really it's sort of friendly, because like when I was in high school, video games weren't that great of a a thing that people like really talked about or had time to focus on, whereas you come here and it's different. It feels like there's actually like people who I can empathize with in that specific way,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Video game wise, because it's definitely an important part of people my age's life, like, because I grew up playing like the Xbox 360, all those sorts of games, from the time when I was before memory, I guess, let's say. So yeah.
Very
cool.
nice. Yeah. So I wanted to, I thought about it earlier when you mentioned the staff and everything, and I wanted to circle back to that. So luckily the Discord, killed two birds with one stone there. So yeah, again, hop into the Discord. Of course, all of our other social media is on there as well. So WMU Esports on pretty much everything: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Our Twitch is the WMU Esports. But other than that, you can find us all in that Discord. You can find us on all those social medias. wmich.edu/esports is our website, which will have my personal contact information on there if you want to reach out to me about anything. Students, if you're an MAT intern or if you're an MAT major, we do an internship program with them every semester. We have our students for this semester, but we do it again every semester, so make sure you guys reach out to us. We're trying to expand to other colleges as well. So we'll let you know updates on that one once we lock some stuff in. But yeah, thank you guys so much, and we will see you all in the next episode.
Goodbye.